Doug! Did you know that today is the anniversary of the first recording of the human voice in 1860?
What did it say?
Your car's warranty is about to expire. Why live easy when you can die hard? Welcome to the Diehards. I am your host, JJ Wenner, and I am joined by my convivial co-host, Doug Orth. Tonight on the show, we are diving into the 2025 rookie running back class. But before we do, as you can see, we have rebranded the podcast. Now, the original Diehards, Emil and Bob, are icons in our industry. We hope to make them proud as we carry on the legacy. So, Doug, anything the good people should know before we dive into your rankings?
As far as what you just said, nothing more than the proper respect to Emil and Bob, and thank them and thank Full Time Fantasy for doing what they're doing for us. All I want to do before we get started is remind everybody of the ground rules of what we're doing for this month. At each position, I score each prospect using a film grade and a prospect grade, basically doing what I can to quantify what a player has done and what I think he is capable of doing. Because this is a fantasy show, we will go to according to how I think they should be selected in rookie drafts as of right now. Landing spots may alter my thinking, but that will be a discussion for another day. As far as we're talking running backs here, right? I have used my scoring system over the last 4 drafts. This class contains the 2nd, 4th, 7th, and 9th ranked running backs in terms of prospect grade over that time.
Okay.
So what is prospect grade, you ask, in case you weren't here last week? At running back, a player needs to be a 3-down option as well as a realistic threat for 1,000 rushing yards and or 500 receiving yards to be a candidate for a perfect grade of 50. Positional scarcity at the pro level is also part of the equation. I just mentioned we're discussing running backs. We'll be discussing 12 of them tonight. For each one, we will be discussing some basic profile information before summarizing what they bring or don't bring to the NFL. I will wrap up with a high-end comp and a low-end comp, followed by best team fits and prospect grade. I want to throw in a shameless plug before we begin. You can find my complete write-ups on all the players we are discussing this month on FF Today. I think there's 4 profiles up right now. We'll have 16 to 17 before the draft. Got it? Good. JJ.
All right. Well, I do have it, Doug. And I'll let you just kick this off. Let's get right to the beginning. Who is your number 1 ranked running back?
No mystery here. Ashton Jeanty, Boise State. As I said, we're going to go through the basic information here. 5'8.5", 211 pounds, 9.25-inch hands, and he'll be 21 years old at the start of the 2025 season. Doesn't have any combine numbers to talk about, so we'll just get into a short summation of what he is. People already kind of know who he is, so I'm not going to wax poetic or go chapter and verse with him. He's about as complete of a running back prospect as a team could hope for nowadays. There are elements of Marshawn Lynch and Maurice Jones-Drew in his game, and it would not be overly surprising if he ends up being a better pro than either one of them. He is in their class when it comes to contact balance. Jeanty easily led the country in forced missed tackles with 151. To give you some perspective, Cam Skattebo, who we'll talk about a little bit later, was about 49 behind him. That's how wide the gap was. So 151 forced missed tackles, while his yards after contact in 2024, get this, 1,970 yards. You know who else is running for 1,970 yards? He's doing that after contact. Easily the most in the modern era. He forced a missed tackle on 33.2% of his rushing attempts on average there. He also recorded twice as many 50, 60, and 70-yard runs than the next closest player last year. In case you want to know, 12 50-yard runs, 10 60-yard runs, and 5 70-yard runs. While it would be preferable, at least from a workhorse perspective, that Jeanty was a little bit bigger than 5'8.5" and 211 pounds, it probably really doesn't really matter all that much. He runs with the elusiveness of a 200-pounder and the power of a 230-pounder. His stiff arm is almost unfair for a player who is also that elusive. There are a few minor concerns that cropped up during his final season, namely the excessive workload. He had 397 touches alone in last year and 830 for his career. And then ball security got to be a little bit of an issue toward the end. He had 4 fumbles in the last 6 games, including 2 in the final game against Penn State. His pass protection needs to improve, but that is true for 99% of the running back prospects every year. His effort and willingness are there, and that's what you look for from a college prospect. You can teach technique, you can teach some of those other things. You want to see the effort, the willingness. I ended up giving a high-end comp to Curtis Martin because he is so well-rounded and hard to knock off his feet, and it should not surprise anyone if his career follows a similar path. To that end, like I already said, my high-end comp for him, Curtis Martin. A low-end comp for him is a more physical Aaron Jones. I also have his best team fits here, and in order, I went with the Bears, the Broncos, the Steelers, the Raiders, the Cowboys, and the Browns. And last but not least, gave him a prospect grade of 47. Remember, that's out of 50, and that's the second out of the 36 graded running backs out of the last 4 years.
Who's the highest?
It is Bijan.
You have him behind Bijan.
Yep, I have a 0.5 behind Bijan and about a point and a half ahead of Breece Hall.
Erroneous. Well, Sniper Mel would like to know, where did you get his hand size?
Sniper Mel would like to know that. How do you? Oh, okay, I got you. No, I thought it was a joke. Okay, no, from NFL.com. So they have the prospect profiles there, and I take the information from the combine, and it's all listed out in the draft profile. So thank you, Sniper Mel.
Listen, everybody is asking. Everybody has Ashton Jeanty as number 1. Why will he fail?
Why will he fail?
If he fails, Doug. If everybody is wrong, why? What's gonna go wrong for him?
I'm gonna easily cop out of the answer here and say injury. And I would think
that's a cop out. I don't like it.
There's not much, like I said. I guess you could say if you mean fail as in terms of not living up to a top 10 pick, maybe he doesn't get any better in pass protection. Maybe he has to come off the field on third down as a pass pro. The running skill is there. The receiving skill is there, even though he had a drop rate last year that was a little bit less than ideal. But he also had, I think he had like 43 catches as a junior. I'm not worried about him as a receiver. It would be that pass pro that would take him off the field for maybe a handful of snaps each game.
And any concern at all about his college workload?
Oh yeah, anytime you get over, I haven't really set a mark, but in the 800s is getting kind of high. But there you're talking about his long-term viability. You're not so much talking about can he make it through his first contract, or if he's going to disappoint during his rookie contract. So I think there's no such thing as a sure thing, but he's pretty complete.
Well, if there's a sure thing out there, it's you, Doug. You're a sure thing to deliver the goods on these running backs. Who do you have at number 2?
Really grew to like this guy, and this is a common number 2, Omarion Hampton, out of North Carolina. Height, weight, 6 foot, 221. Just what you'd like to see there. 9 3/8 inch hands, and he'll be 22 at the start of the season. His combine numbers, and for the ones that are notable, I'm going to include the percentile just to give our listeners a idea of what they should, where that ranks. So 40-yard dash, 4.46, that was in the 81st percentile. Vertical jump, 38, which is great for a running back, especially at his size. That's 85th percentile. And broad jump was 10-10, and that's in the 96th percentile. Tells you that he is awfully explosive for 221. And then he had kind of an average 20-yard shovel time, but you're kind of looking, that was 4.4, but you're looking at those first 3 numbers are called triangle numbers, and you're looking more for those triangle numbers than you are at a shovel or anything else. So let me transition right into what I thought of him. One of the most impressive parts Hampton's resume was the fact that his production did not suffer despite watching Drake May and then North Carolina's top receiver from 2023. That was Tez Walker. He went to the Ravens, didn't play much, but he was when those two guys moved on to the pros last year. Not only did then the Tar Heels lose their stud quarterback and field stretcher, but Hampton was also forced to carry more of the load this year when May's replacement, Max Johnson, was ruled out for the season after getting hurt the 2024 opener. So he was basically working with backup quarterback after the first game. Despite being the focal point of defenses each week and constantly facing heavy boxes, Hampton maintained his rushing efficiency. It was 5.9 yards per carry both years, and he increased his receiving production from 7.7 yards per catch to 9.8. While none of this is trait-based scouting per se, it provides valuable context regarding how much upside Hampton might have. You got to ask yourself, what could he have done in 2024 in an offense that actually forced defenses to play him legitimately? So he'll never be the kind of running back that an offensive coordinator will want running option routes out of the slot. I'm talking, you look at guys like Alvin Kamara and Christian McCaffrey for stuff like that. You're not going to run them on option routes, but he is the kind of player that a play caller will want to get out on space more than North Carolina did. So I'm talking screens. I'm talking even having him be like the focal point of a quick screen to the outside. I don't know why running backs don't get used more on that play anyway. He will almost certainly establish himself as one of the league's premier short yardage options in relatively shorter because he's so comfortable running between the tackles and so good at getting yards after contact. He was at 4.35 yards after contact per attempt over his final 2 college seasons. Anything over 4 is damn good. 3, I won't say 3 is average. 3 is still pretty good. The pro in the college game. 4 is where you're getting pretty good. There are also minimal ball security issues with him. He had 1 fumble on 319 touches last year and 2 fumbles on 282 touches in 2023. So over it's about 600 touches. He had 3 fumbles. Not bad. Durability will likely be an issue for him down the road if he doesn't do a better job of picking his spots to absorb a hit, because he doesn't quite seek out contact like somebody else we'll talk about a little bit later, but he does seek out a lot of contact. But the only game that he missed over 3 seasons was the bowl game he opted out of this past year. Little doubt in my mind, Hampton's going to be a player the coaching staff will fall in love with because he is a tone setter whose toolbox likely was not maximized in college. Most likely outcome from him is that he will be utilized as a 3-down workhorse capable of wearing out defenses and closing games out. He's not quite on the same level as Jonathan Taylor, but it would not be surprising if he enjoys similar success down the road. I'll get to my comps here real quick. My high-end comp for him was DeMarco Murray. My low-end comp for him was one of my favorite running backs to watch, Chris Carson. And I have my team fits for him in order: the Broncos, the Steelers, the Raiders, the Bears, Cowboys, the Browns. Last thing, my prospect grade for him was 45, and that's 4th out of the 36 graded running backs over the last 4 years. What say you?
Any worries about his pass blocking? Historically, subpar pass blockers can lose some 3rd down touches. Are you nervous at all about that?
Not really. He, as I recall, he if anything, he's almost too aggressive with his. You love the fact that he's 221 and he's putting his heart into the blocking. I don't remember what I graded him versus Jeanty as far as pass blocking. I'd be surprised if I didn't have Hampton a little bit higher. I think with him, he needs to not necessarily let the contact come to him, but he needs to be more needs to plan himself. I believe he needs to plan himself, and so he doesn't need to seek out the kill shot. He just needs to protect the quarterback. You understand what I'm saying?
I completely understand what you're saying, Doug. All right, so that's Omarion Hampton. Who is your number 3 prospect?
I wrestled with this one for a while. And I don't want to make it too mysterious here. It's going to be TreVeyon Henderson. And I wasn't going through watching him initially. It wasn't overly impressed as I was when I went back and watched him again a little bit last night. Had to refresh my memories because it's been a while since I did his write-up. Anyway, we know he's from Ohio State, 5'10", 202, 9.5-inch hands, and he's going to be 22 at the beginning of the season. This is where you start to fall in love with him a little bit. And then you watch him. I'll talk about why some other reasons. 4.43 in the 40-yard dash. That's 84th percentile. 38.5 inches in the vertical jump. That's 89th percentile. This broad jump was 10.8. That's the 93rd percentile. Now, what I have here, and this is, I'm going to wrestle with this one because what I saw from him initially, and then what I saw from him when I looked at him again were two very different things. I don't know if that's because I looked at 9 other running backs in the meantime. I don't know what it was, but anyway, for the upside case of what Henderson can be in the NFL, watch how he was used and how well he ran against Purdue last season. I understand Purdue was not a good team, but they actually were creative with how they used him, and they weren't nearly as creative against all the other teams. Anyway, he was used in the slot and out wide, even ran a beautiful stutter and go for a 32-yard gain. He ran with power, even displayed some contact balance. If I could have seen that more of that in other games, he would be neck and neck with Omarion Hampton in my rankings, maybe even higher. And that's it for a 202-pound running back. Instead, I have him heading up the next tier down. Down from Hampton. In just about every meaningful game in 2024, I didn't see that Henderson ran with a great deal of power, and he typically got tripped up on the first contact. Even his work in the passing game was limited to swings and screens. In the passing game, offensive coordinator Chip Kelly did not do a great job of accentuating his talents. As a runner, he was too boom or bust for my liking. However, and this is before Quinshon Judkins came into the picture, from 2021 to 23 revealed a player who could be more effective in short yardage situations. So I'm going to lean more on what he was doing when he was the only show in town as opposed to what happened when I'm going to lean on 3 years of results over the last year, I guess is what I'm trying to say here. At his best, he reminds me a bit of a prime Devontae Freeman. He excels on outside zone runs, is much more of a north-south runner than one might expect for a 202-pounder. The one area where he truly stands out is pass protection. That is no small thing because it should mean he will be on the field on most passing downs. He might be the only running back prospect I have given a perfect score to in my 4 years of grading attributes the way I do for pass protection. I give 6 points for that. I gave him a full 6 points. Another feather in his cap is that he only fumbled twice on 667 career touches and did not lose either one of them. While it remains to be seen what version of Henderson that the NFL will get, it also seems reasonable to assume teams will try to use him in the same way that the Lions used Jahmyr Gibbs. He's not in that class, so let's not go down that road. He's not in Jahmyr Gibbs' class as far as an athlete or as a back, but he should have no issue making an instant impact as a movable chess piece. He never handled more than 210 touches in a season, and that was his freshman year that he had the 210. So logic would suggest he would probably begin his professional career as a complementary back who might usually be capped at 12 or 13 touches most games. I do think he possesses the necessary mindset and passing game skill to be a featured back, but he will need to do a much better job of picking up yards after contact to become one. If he can add some lower body strength, then I think an Aaron Jones career arc is a possibility. Now, for my comps, I had a more explosive Kyren Williams, and for that, I leaned a lot on the pass blocking. And there was some with the running, but especially with the pass blocking. And my low-end comp for him was Justice Hill. Best team fits in order again: Chargers, Chiefs, Raiders, Patriots, and Browns. And I gave him a 42 for my prospect grade, when that's 7th out of 36 graded running backs.
So a lot of what I read about him questions his vision. You know, you mentioned a little bit about him being north-south. There's also a lot of talk about his contact balance. When he does get hit, it's kind of over a lot of times. Do you have any concerns about that going to the next level where everybody's a little bit bigger, hits a little bit harder?
Yep, those are legitimate concerns, and that's why he's where he is here, and that's why he's not in Omarion Hampton's tier as opposed to heading off this tier. The reason he's here is because he's going to contribute a lot in the passing game. I don't think there's any question about that. He probably, as you're speaking about his vision, I probably saw him running into the back of his lineman more, and not obsessively so, but I probably saw more plays where he ran into the back of his lineman than any other of the other 12 guys the other 11 guys that we're going to talk about. And then you said, contact balance. Again, I go back to that game against Purdue. Purdue was everything that you would hope that he could be. Every other game, it was too much. Just what you said, contact balance was iffy. So that's where I want him to get a little bit of better lower body strength. And I don't remember what his yards after contact metrics were, but I think anything, if they're relatively high, it's because he's quite explosive. And so it's amazing how high your average can go if you're able to break off a 70-yard run after you get contacted after 3 yards. A lot of the backs in this class can't do that. He has the ability to potentially do that.
Sniper Mel asks, how much does their college come into your predictions? I take that to mean like
college production.
Yeah, well, college production and also like level of competition.
Yeah. Okay. Well, production, very little. I mean, I'm not going to. It wouldn't have mattered to me if Jeanty ran for 2,500 yards or 1,500 yards. I mean, I'm looking at the traits that I find to be important.
Most predictive. Yeah.
Yeah. I know there's plenty of advanced analytics that will help do that too. I want to see these guys with my own eyes. And I don't want to have to. If they fail, they're going to fail because I didn't observe them correctly. You know what I'm saying? And there's a lot of other stuff that goes into that too. You said, what was the interpretation of that you thought of? There was the stats. Oh, level of competition, right?
Level of competition.
I'll mention it in my profiles. I certainly don't think about it when I'm putting up my prospect grade because I'm trying to visualize how they're going to be used in the NFL. So that's one of the reasons why the advanced analytics end up taking kind of a back seat in my profiles. I want to do that to give context, but I'm not using it as in this guy has 5 yards after contact against a group of 5 competition. Therefore, that's weighted versus 4. I don't need to get into that. If a guy can break a tackle from a good tackler, that means the same to me, whether it's Division II or Division I, within reason.
All right, sir. Who is your number 4 running back prospect?
Well, let's stay in Ohio State, JJ.
Do we have to?
I know. Yeah, Pennsylvania's so much better.
Thank you. It is.
Ohio State's new resident of Ohio State, Quinshon Judkins. Of course, he came from Ole Miss, but he helped Ohio State win the national championship this past year. 6 foot 221, 9 1/4 inch hands, and he's going to be 21 at the start of the 2025 season. Great metrics here for somebody who doesn't necessarily show that on film. 4.48 40, that's 75th percentile. 38.5 inch vertical, that's 89th percentile. And a broad jump of 11 feet, that's 98th percentile. Especially those jump scores, that's awesome for a 221-pound thumper. So let's get right into what I thought when I watched him. He topped 1,000 rushing yards, and accounted for at least 16 touchdowns in each of his 3 college seasons, each of which came in the 2 most competitive conferences in college football. It's really a resume that speaks for itself. He runs as angry and violently as anyone in this draft class. Well, he's number 2 in that regard. We'll get to somebody else who's a little bit more violent and angry. He repeatedly puts potential tacklers to the ground with his stiff arm. Did not miss any of his 42 college games and handled at least 20 touches 16 times. He averaged a fumble only once every basically 200 touches over his college career, which is a remarkable number for someone who tries as hard as he does to gain a yard on every play. Combination of his physicality, durability, and ball security set him apart from most backs and should be enough to earn him the respect of his new team And it would not be shocking if he does not emerge as the team's primary early down and short yardage option quickly and hold down those responsibilities for the majority of his NFL career. After that, though, it gets a bit tricky. I gave you those great combine numbers, right? Well, he's you also don't look past it. You judge the film first, then you throw in the combine numbers and see if they pair up. And what analysts like to say a lot of time is, do the combine numbers say something than what I saw in film? And if they do, I need to go back and watch it again from that lens. Anyway, Judkins is never going to be overly elusive, and his time speed, again 4.48, is a bit misleading in part because he's more explosive than fast, despite those impressive testing numbers. A respectable almost 15% of his 739 career carries went for at least 10 yards, but only 4.3% of them went for at least 20 yards. That's not the kind of thing that usually improves in the NFL. He's a capable receiver, but not one coordinators will likely ever use as more than a check down option. The most concerning aspect of his game, and the thing that will probably keep him from becoming a feature back if he does not improve it quickly, is what he put on film in pass pro. The combination of marginal utility as a weapon in the passing game and average at best ability to pick up or recognize a blitz is a big deal and makes it likely Judkins will begin his career as a back who likely needs to work in a committee with a dynamic change of pace back, at least for this year. However, he seems like one of those backs who just needs time to pick up some of the finer points of the passing game because he played in 2 college offenses that were more concerned about keeping things simple by using tempo rather than out-executing the opponent. It may take him a bit longer to be a bell cow than the other 3 backs we've discussed so far, but I think it should happen eventually. I think you'll like my comps for him. My high-end comp for him was a young Kareem Hunt. My low-end comp for him was Jordan Mason. Again, in order for the team fits: Bears, Broncos, Raiders, Steelers, Cowboys, Browns, and Saints. And I have him with a 41.0 prospect grade. That's tied for 9th out of the 36 grade running backs.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned pass pro.
Yes.
Because some of the write-ups I was reading while doing my research mentioned that they liked his pass pro. So I'm going to have to go back and review that on my end, like you said, because I'm getting contradictory information. My question to you is, though, do you think Judkins is going to be too reliant on having a good offensive line? Is he going to be able to make it happen on his own?
I think he can make his own yards, not the same way that Jeanty and Hampton can, but I think he can make his own yards. But he's not going to be one of those. And I hate to use Jeanty as an example because he's an outlier in a lot of respects. But you see some runs with Jeanty where he gets contacted after 5 and he goes for 50. You're very unlikely to see Judkins do that. As I think I put in my profile of him, he's more of a singles and doubles hitter. So if you're happy with gets hit at 3 and runs for and ends up getting a 6 or 7 yard gain, I think that's what he's not David Montgomery, but I think people will associate David Montgomery with that being that kind of runner. And I think I'm going to stick with my comps with him, obviously, but he's a thumper. He's not somebody I think he's somebody who can make his own yards, but he's not going to make a lot of them after contact. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Because I wasn't going to explain it anymore.
Well, you are a jerk. All right. Who is your number 5, Doug?
Okay, this guy broke my heart. I'm a Husker fan, and he broke my heart at the end of the year because he did nothing as a runner, and then he broke off something like a 70, 75, 80 yard reception for a touchdown. Anyway, Iowa running back Kaleb Johnson. 6'1", 224, 9 5/8 inch hands, and he's going to be 22 at the start of the season. His much discussed 40 time was 4.57. We're not going to get into that's good enough. That's not great, but it's good enough. It's not nearly as bad as some people were making it out to be. Oh, look at that. Who is this then? Who's this then, Carla?
She has half good taste. Keep going, buddy.
All right. Kaleb Johnson. Some players are the focal point of their team's offenses. Buckle in, JJ. I got some goodies for you here. Okay. Then there are players like Johnson who are essentially the entire offense. Iowa scored 40 offensive touchdowns in 2024. Johnson was responsible for 23 of them, so basically 58% of their offensive touchdowns. The next closest Hawkeye had 4. He had 23. The next closest one had 4. Iowa averaged 329 yards per game in 2024. Johnson was responsible for 144 of them, so he's responsible for about 44% of their offense. Okay, with all that said, it was difficult to get a firm grasp of Johnson despite watching most, if not all, of his 262 touches last season. He looked like a pre-injury version of Todd Gurley on two or three runs against Minnesota, and then the same story against Washington. On the other hand, he routinely went down on first contact against Michigan State, UCLA, and Nebraska. There was one big run he had against the Spartans. It is hard to remember another back whose contact balance and power varied so much from week to week. With that said, he could have also been feeling the effects of his first high usage season around the Michigan State game, because I went in order there. I think it was Michigan State first, UCLA, and Nebraska. His yards per carry dropped in a big way from 8.0 in September and 7.2 in October to 4.2 in November. And I think all three of those games that I mentioned were November games. So I'm going to assume for now that was the reason that he was starting to wear down a little bit, which perfectly understandable. Pass protection with him is a huge issue. This will be a common refrain for us here. What we won't hear is he only had 54 pass block snaps in his career. 54. We're talking about a guy that was in college for 3 years. I don't care that some backs have that in a half a college season. He had that in his Iowa career. So with only that many pass blocking snaps in his career, he will likely need at least a year or two to get up to speed in that regard, which will almost certainly make him a 2-down back for half of his rookie contract. His durability was not a question mark this year, but upright runners, and that's a key there. Upright runners like him tend to struggle with injuries in the NFL. Fortunately, he seems to be in good shape just about everywhere else. It's no small feat when you're averaging 20 touches a week and you don't fumble. He did not fumble last year. He did have 2 drops and 25 targets, but you see enough with him catching with his hands that I don't think it's probably got more of a focus issue than it is an ability issue. And then, as I said before, his speed, despite what his detractors said during the combine, 4.58 is good enough. It's not great, but it's good enough. All in all, I think he'll have an immediate impact in the NFL if he's allowed to be an early down runner in a zone running scheme, and those two things are important there. As he develops better technique and more of a feel for the pass pro, there should be an opportunity to take on a more feature role sometime in 2026. So I think we're looking at – he's not a developmental guy, but I think if you're looking for a year one featured back here, I don't think you're getting him. My high-end comps for him, Brian Robinson Jr., and my low-end comp for him was a young Latavius Murray. Best team fits, again in order, Steelers, Broncos, Cowboys, Raiders, Bears, Browns, and Bengals. His prospect grade, prospect grade was a 40.5 out of 50, and that's tied for 16th out of the 36 graded running backs over the last 4 years.
So he's ranked that high overall for you, but he's just going to be a 2-down thumper?
For now, I would say I'm looking at more like 2.5 years of potential feature back or potential lead back. I want to make sure I make the distinction there. I think I'm looking at more like 2.5 years of lead back potential. I don't think it's a question if he will be a good pass blocker. I think it's a question of him just going through hundreds, if not thousands, of reps doing it, and he'll get those opportunities. But there is very much potential that like my comps for him. What do we see Brian Robinson Jr. do right now? He's primarily an early down back, and I don't think it's because they have Austin Eckler in Washington. I think that's what he is. It doesn't mean that he can't catch the ball. It just means that there's other people that are better in the passing game than he is. Same thing with Latavius Murray.
All right, sir. Well, why don't you tell me who your number 6 is?
Well, I already know how you feel about him because I looked at the show sheet. So, wow. You know what? Let's just go to commercial and put him with all the other second-tier backs.
No, go on. Come on. Tell us about your Bay.
Yeah, my Bay. My Bay is Bhayshul Tuten. This probably is the first surprise of the in terms of order. I want to make clear, too, the final 7 guys that we're going to talk about are fairly well clumped together. So, the first 5 are, I won't say in their own stratosphere. That's not fair. But anyway, Tuten is the best of the rest. Put it that way. He went to Virginia Tech, 5'9", 206, 9-inch hands, and he's going to be 22 years old at the start of the season. Now, these 3 numbers I'm going to tell you are one reason why we should like him, even though that. Most of us didn't know who he was until the combine. 4.32 in the 40-yard dash, that's 98th percentile. Vertical jump of 40.5, that's 95th percentile. Broad jump of 10.10, 96th percentile. Not bad when you're better than 19, when you're more athletic than 19 out of every 20 backs that have ever entered that performed at the combine. So like I just said, Tuten tested in the 95th percentile or above in the 40 vertical jump and broad jump at the combine. The numbers do not lie, as 54% of his rushing yards in 2024 came on explosive runs. However, he's more than just a big play back with gaudy measurables. His 62 missed tackles forced was tied for 16th in the FBS, and that's a mark that's even made more impressive when we consider he only had 183 carries. He's not the kind of back that will string together multiple moves to make a defender miss in space, but he does not lack for lateral agility either. It is more, what I just said is more that he is a solid 206-pound piece of scrap metal iron that can deliver a punch and run through contact. He wasn't used very creatively in the passing game at Virginia Tech, but there would seem to be ample upside for him as a receiver because his athleticism would make him a nightmare for most linebackers. Anybody with those measurables, and that's one thing you can use those measurables for. If you're that kind of athlete, you can free yourself up from a linebacker. He's also one of the better and more willing pass blockers in this class, which is no small thing for a back his size. Now let's get to some of the bad stuff. His biggest issue is probably ball security. He fumbled 9 times on 406 touches over 2 seasons with Virginia Tech. Although he was not charged with a drop on 27 targets last year, he had 5 on 39 targets as a junior. At this point of his career, he seems unsure of his hands and thus relies too much on body catching. Again, not uncommon, but you want your running backs. Somebody like Kaleb Johnson, for example, he was using his hands when he was catching the ball. Tuten was using his body more often than probably shouldn't. He misses cutback opportunities a bit more often than ideal, and lacks patience at times, although both could have been a product of the Hokies' emphasis on getting into the perimeter. And if you watch enough of his runs, it was almost, I wouldn't say they were allergic to running inside with him, but you could see that it was their focus to have him run outside. His muscular build gives him a chance to be a bell cow, but not every coach is going to feel comfortable using a 206-pound back or trusting a 206-pound back with a huge workload very often. As a whole, he's one of the more enticing running backs in this draft class with limited warts in his game. My thoughts here about it for his new team should be correcting the fumbling issue, which may always be a concern. I think when I say 9-inch hands, I believe I said 9-inch hands. Other than that, there's very little reason outside of a stubborn old school coach that believes big backs are the only ones that can be bell cows why Tuten can't be a 3-down back at some point by the end of his rookie season. Again, we're talking about two big things that he needs to improve, right? So You can't stay on the field if you're fumbling a lot and dropping balls. High end comp for him, Chase Brown. Low end comp for him, Raheem Mostert. And I have a lot of good team fits for him. I'll cap it off at 5 here. 49ers, Raiders, Chargers, Broncos, and Bears. And I gave him, I believe like I did Kaleb Johnson, a 40.5 prospect grade. And that, again, that's tied for 16th out of 36 running backs.
Well, for the same reason that I will avoid the rootin' scootin' Bhayshul Tuten,
no.
It's the same reason I avoid boxer shorts. Ball security. You got to keep the ball safe. I don't care how fast you run. I don't care. If you can't hold on to the rock, man, you know how many of these old school coaches love to bench the rookie. I mean, dear God, I'm glad Tom Coughlin's not in the league. I mean, you would never see him again. He would go the way of David Wilson. Little throwback for you. So I don't know.
But you remember, JJ, Tiki Barber had a fumbling problem, and then he went high and tight, and then he didn't fumble anymore.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
No, you're betting against logic. You're betting against history to say that a guy that fumbles that much is just going to, minimize it. So no, there's a reason. I know his prospect grade is up there with Kaleb Johnson, but there's a reason that I think it's the first 5, and then we have a good solid, at least 7. There's more than 12 good backs. We're going to talk about 12 backs, but yeah, there's a reason why he's separate from the first 5.
All right, Doug. I'm going to let this one go, although I don't know.
No, look. If we're doing this, if we weren't just splitting it up even, we would have taken a commercial break after the first 5.
But we did not. But speaking of commercial breaks, thank you, Sniper Mel. Diehards. Dynasty leagues are, without a doubt, the fastest growing segment in all of fantasy sports. And the Dynasty Football World Championships, now in their 13th season, are underway. Adopt an orphan to take part in the upcoming rookie drafts starting 1 week after the actual NFL draft, or jump into a new startup and draft your own team from the beginning. Either way, you'll be well on your way to becoming the next Dynasty King. Drafts start at just $75 with $150, $299, and higher options available for you high-stakes players. Doug, head to dynastyking.com and look for Dynasty Football World Championship. All right, buddy. I was a little mean to you after Bhayshul, but who is your number 7? Oh, yes, 7 running back.
Oh, wait, you want me to? I should be mean to you now. You lost count. That's not cool, dude. Pay attention.
Let me list the reasons I don't like Doug, and I will keep perfect count. We'll start at the end of the list. 732. I
believe this is about where I have a 3-way tie for prospect grades here. So I'm going to be less concerned about order here for these next 3 than I was for the first 6. However, if I was in a draft right now, I would, as I said in the beginning, this is how I would go. DJ Giddens out of K-State. 6 foot, 212, 9.25 inch hands, 22 years old before the start of this 25 season. Again, we're talking about a great athlete. 84th percentile in 40-yard dash. He ran a 4.43. Vertical jump at 39.5. That's 92nd percentile. And then 10.10 on broad jump. That's 96th percentile. Giddens turned in some of the best film by any player at any position last season against Colorado. I would highly encourage anyone who wants. I think he's going to probably go in the 3rd round. If you want to be ahead of the league, your league mates on, I would highly recommend having you watch him against Colorado. Forget the fact he showed his potential as a workhorse back with 220 yards on 27 touches, 220 total yards on 27 touches. Wow. Let me say that again. Forget the fact he showed his potential as a workhorse back with 220 total yards on 27 touches. Didn't realize how many T's there were until just now.
Totally.
Yes, thank you. He forced 12 of his 55 missed tackles for the season in that game and broke off 8 explosive runs being of 10-plus yards. 12 of his 55 missed tackles in that game alone. If Giddens can bring that to the table more often in the NFL, he has a real chance of being a top 5 back in this loaded class. Now, looking at his 2024 season from more of a macro perspective, he possesses as good of a vision quickness combination as any back in this draft. His contact balance may not be elite, but it isn't far off. He'll occasionally get knocked for a lack of power, but his 4.16 yards per carry after contact tell a different story. Now, where I think that lack of power gets mentioned is he may not truck tacklers in the same way that Ashton Jeanty or Omarion Hampton occasionally do, but there's no shortage of times that Giddens carried a defender or 3 for a few yards. In a nutshell, he is a very smooth and easy mover who fumbled once on 478 touches over his final 2 seasons in college. I'm trying to concentrate, Jay.
Sorry.
So again, fumbled once over 478 touches over his final 2 seasons. It is worth mentioning that Giddens did not begin playing football until his sophomore year of high school, which may explain a couple of his current shortcomings. Probably the most notable area for Giddens is how high he runs, which likely explains why his missed tackles force, again, the 55 that I mentioned, wasn't any higher. There were several times that a potential big play came to an end because the second-level defender was able to square him up and win a leverage battle that he should not have been able to win. To that end, there were a couple times, like I said, where the defender was able to pick him up off the ground and basically drive him into the turf because he's running too high. So some of that is a matter of being high cut. We're talking about high hips as opposed to low hips. So part of that is probably being high cut, but he could do a better job of lowering his pads. If he lowers his pads, he's not getting driven into the ground like that. He flashed potential as a receiver, and K-State did a better job than most teams of using him on actual receiver routes on occasion. But here's one of his fatal flaws: 12% drop rate over his last 2 seasons. We want that more in the 4 to 5 neighborhood, not 12. He's no more than an average blocker in pass pro either. I'm going to attribute that to the fact that he hasn't played for very long, although identifying who to block does not appear to be much of an issue. So that tells me his struggles in pass pro are more technical than anything, which can be improved through NFL coaching. Given his current struggles as a pass catcher and blocker, it's probably too much to ask for him to emerge as a week 1 3-down back. With that said, he's one of the more impressive runners in this draft and should push down for an early down role right away. My high-end comps for him, Kenneth Walker, and my low-end comp for him, Marlon Mack. That's not quite the Wayback Machine, but that's a semi-Wayback Machine, right? Marlon Mack. And again, I'll cap it at 5 as far as the best team fits: Broncos, Chargers, Raiders, Cowboys, and Steelers. I gave him a 40 for my prospect grade, and that's tied for 19th out of the 36 backs over the last 4 years that I've graded.
The one negative that kept coming up as I was reading about Giddens is that the fact that there is no combine test for want to. Does he have the drive necessary to be an NFL back?
Drive as in desire to succeed, or drive as in terms of
You mentioned that he's making the right read in pass blocking, just not delivering, that he has a high drop percentage.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of shouts to me concentration issues, focus issues, and just that little bit of, as Dan Campbell would say, that dog in him.
Yeah.
To be a running back in the NFL, you got to have a lot of dog.
You're right.
Do you think he has the enough dog?
The only counter to that, or the only answer I can come up for that, is when you see him, I think the way I said it was carrying a defender or 3, and you can see with the way he runs not through contact, but the way he carries tacklers sometimes, that he wants it. So he's got the dog from that perspective. Now, does he have the over the top? I want to be great. That's something that I don't know that you could get if you interviewed him. I don't. I tend, when I get questions or when I question myself as far as whether he has that ability, I look at how he runs through contact, and if he wants it, if he wants that extra yard or 2 or 3 that much, that tells me at least he has the beginning traits of a dog. So I'm going to attribute most of his shortcomings right now to the fact that he's been a running back for. He hasn't been a running back. He hasn't been a running back since he started playing Pee Wee. It's been within the last 5, 6 years, and that stuff does matter. It doesn't seem like it should matter, but it does matter.
All right, who is your number 8 ranked rookie, Doug?
It was. I can't tell you how much fun it was to watch Dylan Sampson. It was, and if you pay me $5 to put him up 3 spots higher, I probably would put him 3 spots higher or more. So, and we'll get to why he's down here. But Dylan Sampson from Tennessee, 5'8", 200, 8 3/4 inch hands, and he's going to be 20 at the start of the 2025 season. So we like that. His combine numbers, 4.42 in the 35-inch vertical jump and a 10.4 broad. And that last one was the 82nd percentile. As far as what I have to say about him, pure electricity. That, to me, in my mind, is the best way to sum up Sampson. His acceleration is something a Porsche might be envious of, and he's one of the few backs in this class that is a threat to score from anywhere. However, he's more than just a good athlete. He runs with as much power as any 200-pound running back as I can remember, and has uncommon contact balance for a back that size. Now, contact balance is not exclusive to bigger backs, but it does help. If you have a bigger body, you should, in theory, have better contact balance. There's other factors, but anyway. He is surprisingly good at breaking tackles. 74 missed tackles on 258 carries in 2024, and he's also really good in short yardage. 80% of his third down carries with four or fewer yards to go were converted in 2024. He's also a disciplined between the tackles runner who doesn't need to exaggerate his moves in the hold to avoid second-level defenders. With that said, he's also very quick and quite elusive, routinely hitting linebackers and safeties with a spin move, sometimes even 2 or 3 in the same play. There were probably 2 or 3 times where I saw him spin 3 times, and it's not like you're playing Madden and you just hit the spin button, right? He's spinning because he's doing something with it. So, in short, he can run by you or he can run through you despite being 200 pounds. Okay, now shifting gears a little bit. While there's no question Sampson earned his yards, it's also worth noting that no running back in this draft class ran against light boxes more often than he did. And we know this from Tennessee's offense. We play 4 or 5 wide. We spread the field from sideline to sideline, and then it's basically 6-on-5 or 6-on-6 football, essentially, when you're running the ball. Somewhat surprisingly, Sampson appears more comfortable. Again, we're focusing on that size again, 5'8", 200. Somewhat surprisingly, he appears more comfortable running inside and bouncing outside if necessary than he does on runs designed to go outside. His biggest shortcomings at this point are ball security. He averaged a fumble about once every 70 touches last year. Identifying the right defender to pick up in pass pro and as a receiver out of the backfield. Regarding his passing game usage, the Volunteers showed little desire to give him in space and let him go one-on-one with the linebacker in space, which, for my mind, is really hard to understand for a running back with his elusiveness. Those drawbacks, along with that same size that I keep mentioning, makes it unlikely he's going to be anything more than a lead back in a committee, especially early in his career. With that said, he will still be attractive to many teams because the NFL values explosive plays now as much now as it ever has, and he can deliver the goods in that regard. My comp, you'll love my high-end comp for him, Ahmad Bradshaw. My low-end comp for him, Michael Carter, the former Jet who is now with the Cardinals.
Out of North Carolina.
Out of North Carolina. In the same draft where there were 2 Michael Carters drafted. Yeah, he was – I don't remember. I think he was the second. I don't remember. There were 2 Michael Carters drafted, and exactly what you said. Best team fits in order: Broncos, Chargers, Cowboys, Raiders, and Browns. And like I told you about a 3-way tie, he's at the 40 on the prospect grade, and that's, again, tied for 19th out of 36 grade running backs.
Much like the biblical Sampson, he does have a weakness, but instead of hair, he's fumbling. You know how I feel about that. It worries me a little bit, especially that he had the fumbling issue facing such light boxes.
Yeah.
So
that's fair.
Some concerns, but I do like his style. Who do you have at number 9?
We're talking about 2 of my favorite backs to watch back-to-back here. So I want to be clear that just because I like watching them doesn't mean that they automatically go all the way up to the top 5. And we'll get into why Cam Skattebo is down here. Anybody who doesn't know by now, he played at Arizona State, 5'9.5", 219 pounds, 9 3/8 inch hands, and he'll be 23 at the start of the season. He only did 2 of the combine measurements, but they were pretty good. 39.5-inch vertical jump, that's 92nd percentile, and 10.3 broad jump. So, JJ, as I start here, do you remember some of the fight sequences in the Rocky movies?
I remember every fight sequence.
Yeah, okay. A lot of big shots given and received and not a lot of punches blocked, right? That's how I feel about watching Skattebo. A lot of crushing body blows and violent haymakers on nearly every run. Few backs I have ever watched seek contact out, and even fewer, if any, play through it like Skattebo. His contact balance is as good as any prospect I've ever seen. I would almost compare it to a cat. You know how you try to throw, you set a cat up here and you set him upside down or whatever, and you try to get it, and the cat always finds its way back on its feet.
I don't know what you do with cats, buddy, but I think there was a smoother way to say that without coming off like Ted Bundy.
My point being is that you've never seen a cat land on its back, because they always have the ability to land on their feet
themselves. Yes,
and that's what I think about when with Skattebo. His contact balance is as good as any prospect I've ever seen, and his desire to keep his legs churning puts him in an elite class in terms of running with power. Most college backs are typically happy with 3 yards per carry after contact. Skattebo averages 4+, and it was a bit shocking to see the number was that low after watching most of his 293 carries. Now, he was already going to be difficult to tackle, being that he's 5'9" and 219, but he accentuates his power by lowering his pads consistently, probably as good as any back in this class. I'm going to give another pop culture reference here for you. To his credit, he has the patience and vision to find a hole and can alter his path at the second level just before he basically turns into the juggernaut. Because that's what it feels like watching him, is watching the X-Men's juggernaut.
Fair.
Unlike most power backs, he was used quite frequently in the screen and swing game, where he made life living hell for any linebacker or safety that had to take him on one-on-one. This past year, he became the first player since Christian McCaffrey in 2015 with 1,500 rushing yards and 500 receiving yards in the same season. Now, despite all of what I said here, he only missed one of 26 games in his 2 seasons with Arizona State. But the reason he's down here, and pretty much the only reason he's down here, is his ability to hold up long-term, given his current play style, is easily the most concerning aspect of his profile. Even the most bruising of NFL running backs don't invite the contact that he seeks. It's also the main, like I said, it's the main reason why he's being here and not the first 15, 20 minutes of the show. Ball security was a slight issue, not terrible, but not great. He had 10 fumbles over the last 3 seasons, and I think that averages out to be 1 fumble every 75, and about one fumble every 75 touches. He does have great burst for his profile, but he tends to get caught from behind, and that's assuming the defender can wrap him up, which there was plenty of those guys that did catch up with him and then couldn't bring him down. Much like his running style, the pass pro can sometimes be hit or miss with him because he's either planting the guy in the dirt or completely whipping. Now, coaches are almost certainly going to love Skattebo as a 4-minute back and shorter yardage option for obvious reasons, but it may be too much to ask for him to be anything more than a thumper in a thunder and lightning backfield given the way he plays. There's no question he should be able to handle heavy workloads when the situation calls for it, but the odds of him maintaining his current style of play beyond his first contract are pretty long in my estimation. I'll get to part of who I comped him with, and I think his career arc will go along those same lines. So my high-end comp for him, I'm going to go with two people. My first thought was John Riggins, and I know that's going to predate a lot of the people here. The more current comp was Peyton Hillis, and Peyton Hillis, I don't know if that might be too far back for some of our viewers, but Peyton Hillis had one really good year and about 7 injury-plagued ones, if I remember correctly. And the way Skattebo plays, I could easily see that when he retires, that people are saying the same thing about his career, is that he had that magical 2029 season, but he couldn't stay on the field for more than 10 games than any other year type of thing. My low end comp for him, and this might be what's the word I'm looking for? Almost too small of one. Do you remember Jacob Hester from the Chargers?
No.
Okay.
I remember the name.
Yeah,
he was a kick returner, wasn't he?
He was a he was a fullback, kind of fullback hybrid at LSU. Then he played for the Chargers. Anyway, he had a nice little career, but he didn't amount to much in terms of the fantasy game. I have his best team fits as being the Steelers, the Bears, the Broncos, and the Saints. Sorry, Steelers, Bears, Broncos, Saints. And because of that, because I don't expect him to last very long or be very effective for very long in his career, I gave him in the same 40 prospect grade. Probably should have actually been a little bit lower than that. I might tweak that as we get closer to the draft, but again, that's still tied for 19th among the 36 running backs that I've graded over the last 4 years.
Yeah, I think my biggest concern with Skattebo, it's a combination, of course, ball security, combined with the fact that he doesn't like going down. Like, right? He's like Tony Soprano that way. He doesn't, and I just think in the NFL, the longer you stay up and you're fighting for that extra yard, gives you a lot more opportunity to get the ball stripped. They seem to be perfected the peanut punch.
Yeah.
So I'm a little concerned there, but I'm going to really enjoy watching him play while he plays.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Who is your number 10 back?
We are number 10. I don't know how many of the people here got to see RJ Harvey at Central Florida, but that's number 10 for me. He's 5'8", 205, 9-inch hands. Slight knock here. He's going to be 24 at the start of the season. He ran a 4.4, 92nd percentile at running back, 38-inch vertical, 85th percentile, and his broad jump was 10.7. That's 91st percentile. Now, bear with me as I take you down a little history lane here. From Tank Bigsby to Kerryon Johnson to Peyton Barber to Cameron Artis-Payne and Trey Mason, UCF head coach Gus Malzahn has sent his fair share of running backs to the NFL since he first became a college coach in 2012. As anyone who has watched all of them would likely say, most of them are very different kind of backs. Harvey's probably the best of the bunch because he has some of Mason's physicality and explosiveness and some of Johnson's utility in the passing game. Does he have enough of either back's trademark to enjoy more success in the NFL than the other guys I mentioned? Great question. It is not hard to watch Harvey and not at least see some shades of a lighter Jaylen Warren, who has carved himself out a nice career as a pro. We're talking about Harvey here. He runs with power, rarely goes down on ankle tackles, and has proven to be quite a weapon out as a pass catcher out of the backfield. He's plenty explosive. He was one of the two He was one of 2 FBS players to break off an 80-yard run in 2023 and 2024. And just as impressively, almost 22% of his runs went for at least 10 yards over the last 2 seasons. Where he falls short are in some of the areas that would make sense for a player who did not begin playing running back full-time until after his true freshman season. He bounces runs a little bit too much. Again, we're talking about ball security again and the blocking. How many of those issues can be resolved to a satisfactory degree over the next 2 years is debatable. Then I mentioned the age issue. He's 24 now, will turn 25 before the Super Bowl. How many teams will be thrilled with the idea of investing 2 years into a player who will be 27 years old before he's more of a finished product? Like Warren, Harvey could have the masses screaming for him to be used more year after year. Could easily say that. However, there are enough concerns at the moment to keep him in more of a 1B role, just like it seems that the Steelers do with Jaylen Warren. I think he's capable of a bigger role down the road, but it's fair to wonder if he won't be one of those backs who gets kind of pigeonholed into a role and can't break out of it by the time he has shored up his biggest weaknesses. As I alluded to earlier, his high-end comp for me is Jaylen Warren. His low-end comp for me is Jerome Ford. My team fits in order again: Chargers, Broncos, Cowboys, Colts, Browns, and Saints. And I gave him a 39.5 on the prospect grade, and that's 24th out of 36 running backs. Yes.
PFF's comp for RJ Harvey, don't call me PJ Harvey, was Duke Johnson. So my only concern is he going to avoid the same fate where year after year we said, if somebody just gives Duke Johnson carries, he's going to be fantasy relevant. And every year, he never got the carries.
Well, I think Jaylen Warren is the modern day version of that. But yeah, I think that's entirely reasonable. And the funny thing, I remember watching Duke Johnson at the U. I think he's still unless Damian Martinez passed him, I don't think he did, but I think Duke Johnson is still the all-time leading rusher in Miami University of Miami history. The guy was pigeonholed into a third down back role in the pros for whatever reason, and then I don't know if it got to play with his mind or whatever. Yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I could definitely see that. Yes.
Hashtag the Browns suck.
No,
no, I'm sorry, Browns fan out there. That was a joke, right? Singular.
Right. Joke.
All right, who's your number 11 running back? Doug.
Are we opening again? Is that where we are? I'm sure however many people didn't get to see RJ Harvey probably didn't get to see Devin Neal either. And who's Devin Neal? He's a running back out of Kansas, was there for, I believe, 4 years. 5'11", 213, 8.5-inch hands, and he's going to be 22 at the start of the season. He had 4.58 on the 40. His jumps were much better, 37.5 on the vertical and 10.4 on the broad, and that both of those are 82nd percentile. Now, one of the most common mistakes in evaluating running backs is the notion that they have to be exceptionally fast, big, or quick. Neal is about average in each of those areas, yet he leaves Kansas as one of the best players in program history because he is so good in the areas running backs actually need to be good at. He excels in part because he's decisive and never in too much of a hurry. He's powerful yet elusive. His contact balance is very good. He proved dependable and durable on 837 college touches. He only lost 4 fumbles, including one fumble over his last 500 touches. And he didn't miss any games over his 550-game college career. Perhaps his best attribute is his utility in the passing game. The trust he shows in his hands is obvious and reflected in the fact he fell just short of an 80% catch rate on 101 targets with only 5 drops in 4 seasons with the Jayhawks. Let me repeat that because it allows a lot of numbers there. It was about a 78-79% catch rate on 101 targets with only 5 drops in 4 seasons. I already touched on the reasons Neal isn't a more sought-after player and why he isn't higher on the list. We talked about not being exceptionally fast, big, or quick, right? In a league that craves big plays, Neal is unlikely to produce many of them. He's more fluid than fast and more strong than big. He can make defenders miss in space, but he does it more with anticipation and subtle moves and less with sharp jump cuts. So what I'm saying here, he's not going to make the many highlights in terms of what he does on a 10-yard run. Perhaps the biggest hole in his game at the moment is pass pro, which comes as a shock for two reasons. The way he runs suggests his football IQ is high, and two, he generally is in good position to block. The problem is he doesn't anchor down or explode into his defender when he blocks, which has led to some, as I put it here, laughably bad reps as a blocker. Now, you know this too, JJ. NFL teams can live with a 3-down back that isn't world-class, fast, or quick. But Neal will have a hard time filling that role at the next level until he improves as a blocker. He has 3-down upside, but most likely outcome for him is as a 1A back in a committee who loses reps to a scat back in known passing situations, which is unfortunate, again, because he's so good as a receiver. But it doesn't matter that you can catch the ball well when you're not the target of a pass and you get your quarterback blown up. So that has to improve. My high-end comp for him was Rachaad White. My low-end comp for him was Dearness Johnson. And my best team fits for him, again, many of the same teams that we've been discussing here: Chargers, Broncos, Colts, Browns, and Saints. Gave him a 37.5 on the prospect grade, and that's tied for 31st of 36 graded running backs.
So a 10 even broad, 34.5-inch vert, 4.6, 140. Those numbers make me worry a lot about his explosiveness, as you said. I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
No, does his elusiveness make up for? Like, I don't know. Is his elusiveness enough to make up for what he's lacking?
Yeah, that's why, as I just kind of said, for somebody who's that good in the passing game or as a receiver, you want him, if he could just be even an average blocker right now, he would at least have that. And the reason I say that is because I think he's got the goods to be an early down back, but it would be such a waste if that's all he is. But I think that's where he is right now. And I know I think what I said with Kaleb Johnson that I was kind of forecasting that he might be a good pass blocker down the road. Well, it's because Johnson hasn't been asked to do it. Neal has had a few years to do it, and he's still not doing it. So is the fact that he will get pro coaching going to help him that much? Who knows? So is it enough? I'll tell you what, if he's there in the third round of my fantasy, in my rookie drafts, I'll be happy to take him, but it's dicey. That's why he's down here, and that's why he's not 7, 8, or 9.
All right, sir. Number 12.
All right, and I've apologized to JJ about this one already. If I got to watch more running backs, there's one that I think is missing, and I'll just get him out there right now. I would have got a chance to watch Damien Martinez. I did not. So there's a chance that he might be a top 8 back for all I know. But I just want to throw that out there before JJ, throws a barb at me at the end of the show. So my number 12 back, Ollie Gordon out of Oklahoma State. And this hurts because he's got great size at 6'1", 226. He has 9.5-inch hands, and he's going to be 22 at the start of the season. The combine numbers I have for him at 4.61 on the 40, a vertical jump of 34.5, and a broad jump of 10 feet. Sorry. Okay, so we remember the 6'1", 226, right? His size would suggest that he's a strong inside runner and a tackle-breaking machine. While there is some of both to his game, he is more of a well-rounded back than a thumper. His physicality does not show up as much inside the tackles as it does once he gets to the second level of the defense. Although part of the problem with the former running inside the tackles is that he's a high cut player who also runs upright. So I think we talked about that with another running back above. It's one thing to be high cut, but lower the pad level. You can't be a high cut player and run up to, and that's a part of this problem. And we'll get into why that's important here in a bit. Those two things in conjunction with one another, and his 6'1" frame will naturally make it harder for him to keep his feet when he is contacted down low. What he lacks in explosiveness, though, he makes up for in other areas. He's a very capable receiver, although he's probably not going to be anything more than a quality option on screens and swings. Although he does rely a bit too much on chop blocks. In fact, that's all I saw him deliver when he was in pass pro. He is nonetheless very good at it and should be considered strong in pass pro until proven otherwise. While there's nothing wrong with Gordon's poor 6'1" speed especially at his size, he ran to that time for the most part in his career, and I'm saying that as a negative. If you're going to time at 4.61, you'd like to run it. You want your football speed to be faster than your time speed, right? And it seemed like he was a 4.6 runner on tape. His yards after contact per rush attempt metrics are not bad. 3.47 for his career, but they should be better, and they were actually more average. I think they were hovering right in the low threes in 2024. Most of his lower half, I'm talking his ankles, I'm talking about his hips, most of his lower half is tight, which means he has little chance of avoiding a loss if the defense gets penetration. I understand that's a hard thing for a lot of running backs to avoid, but some running backs have that ability, have those loose hips, as they like to say, and he does not have loose hips. It also means the lower half being tight also means he needs to be in an offense that asks him to focus on running very little outside the tackles. His legs and feet surprisingly stop on contact more often than not as well, again, which is you're negating the whole 226-pound well-built part of your body if your feet stop on contact. And that kind of defies logic because he typically performed well in short yardage, but if that continues in the pros, I don't think he's going to continue to be good in short yardage. There's also the small issue of how much of an outlier his 2023 season, which I think he led FBS in rushing yards. It was in the 1,700 range, I believe. How much of a outlier that was compared to 2022 and 2024. So when that happens, you ask yourself, okay, was the offensive line and the quarterback play to blame? It seemed like to me he didn't run. I call it vigor. He didn't seem to run with nearly as much vigor last season as he did in 2023. I don't think that's in question. Now, did he lose interest once the Cowboys season went sideways? Because I'm sure they didn't make a bowl game. I think they won maybe 3 or 4 games. Did he lose interest once the season went sideways? And was he focusing his energy and his efforts on staying healthy and being ready for the pros because that's something that has been floated out there. Gordon was one of the handful of players I was willing to judge almost based almost entirely on his 2023 season. But the fact of the matter is, when I looked at that was only marginally better. High cut runners who are as tight in the hips and ankles as Gordon need great interior blocking to succeed, especially in NFL. He might get lucky in that regard in terms of landing spot, but most teams do not prioritize great interior blocking. In fact, those are usually your lowest paid players across the board, guards and centers. Gordon's willingness to block and sure hands as a receiver will probably keep him around the league for a while, but there are only probably a handful of teams that can make him look good. I also worry his overall running style and general lack of big playability will call it his durability into question and make him more of a committee back than the potential low-end feature back that I believe many hope he can be. And so my high-end comp for him, a light version of Brian Robinson Jr., second time we mentioned him today, but a light version of him, and my low-end comp for him, A.J. Dillon.
Oh. And so my best team fits again in order, and we're talking about a guy who's probably going to go 3rd round if he's lucky. I think we're probably looking 4th, 5th round, I'm guessing. But anyway, Bears, Broncos, Steelers, Bengals, Cowboys, Raiders, and Browns. And just like I did for Devin Neal, gave him a 37.5 on the prospect grade, and that's, again, tied for 31st out of the 36 graded running backs over the last 4 years. back you didn't watch, Damian Martinez, I think is easily better than Ollie Gordon, possibly better than Devin Neal. To me, he takes a licking, he keeps on ticking. That old tagline from when we were young, Doug. But he can handle and slide off tackle attempts pretty well. I like Damian Martinez a lot. Think he might be a cheaper, possibly better version of Cam Skattebo. So when you get a chance, make sure you are watching. And just to recap, Doug's top 12 list, we have Ashton Jeanty, Omarion Hampton, TreVeyon Henderson is the top 3, followed by Quinshon Judkins, Kaleb Johnson, Bhayshul Tuten at number 6, followed by Giddens, Sampson, and Cam Skattebo. Finishing up with RJ Harvey, Devin Neal, and Ollie Gordon II. It is time to say goodbye. Let people know where they can find us and any final thoughts you might have. Doug.
You can find me on Blue Sky and the X Machine. Blue Sky both have the same handles. The one that you see right here, wherever, pretty damn close to it anyway. And then no, not close. Okay, never mind then. And then as I teased in the beginning, I'm doing the prospect rookie draft prospect profiles are for FF today. Omarion Hampton will be the 5th of 16 or 17 that drop over between now and the draft. Did the quarterbacks already and did Jeanty and Omarion Hampton. Of course, if you watch this, then you'll have a good base for what you're going to read there. But I have more stuff over there that you're going to want to read. So anyway, that's what I have. What's up with you, JJ?
I'm at JJ Wenner on the socials. Thank you to everybody who tuned in and listened. Please like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Be sure to follow Doug, everything he's doing at FF today. Fantasy points. Make sure you're also following Full-Time Fantasy on X. Stay tuned for some exciting updates about the FFWC. We are going to be back next Wednesday at 7 p.m. to cover the rookie wide receivers. And until then, be safe, be well, and as always, boat drinks, my friends. Boat drinks.